Hello fellow tankers, this is Dauntless and welcome to Replay Review. Today we're going to be taking a look at Tanker's Asylum's replay that he submitted in his T-54 lightweight, the Tier 9 Soviet light tank. The map today is Lakeville and the lineup is Tier 10. Looking at both teams, they're, skill-wise, they're pretty even. I wouldn't say that one team has a huge advantage right here over the other. The only major thing I'm seeing differently is that their team has more armor. Because they have more heavy tanks and the fact that Platoon 1 has two Type 4 heavies as well as their VK4502B, all three of those tanks are very, very difficult to dig out, especially with only one arty on either side. So that could cause a problem for us in the city. We do have an IS-7 to contest it, but the IS-7 is going to have a hard time against that armor unless he loads some gold ammunition. They also have a couple top tier medium tanks, which are good players, and if they push down the 4 line, that could cause problem for our heavies if they're getting shot at into the city. And the major thing that I'm noticing here is the fact that we have a light tank, which happens to be Tanker's Asylum, and they do not. This is a huge advantage, especially on this map, because this is going to allow him to get early lights in the middle and have very, very little chance of being spotted. So the smart decision here would be to push down the 4 line and get into the correct bush and to spot things that are pushing across, hopefully those Type 4s. So with that being said, we will get this game started. So one thing that Tankers does immediately that I'm not really a fan of is the fact that he doesn't go straight towards the 4 line. I've watched this replay a couple times now, and I know that he's going to go down that way. So realistically, he should have just swung around this T-62 and pushed around. That cuts down on time and prevents you from harassing your teammates. But he chooses to try to outspeed this T-62A and goes around it, and that causes him to lose a few seconds off his time, as well as possibly annoying that player. This Coda swings a little bit wide, and Tankers overcorrects, just try to not fall off the edge, and he is able to get down to this position quickly. Now personally, this could be because maybe he has a slower computer and he doesn't want to risk falling off the edge, but generally I like to hug this cliff right here and go straight into this bush and not swing so much around, because this is going to prevent you from getting lit from anything that might be sitting in a bush right here and has line of sight up and through here. But again, they have no light tanks, and so the odds of being lit here are relatively thin. And he does take his time getting into this bush. It's really critical that you get into this bush as quickly as you can, but once he is in it, he does set up correctly. Now, personally for me, when I'm in this bush and I realize that the odds of me getting lit are pretty small, I do tend to turn around so I can get out quickly. But, as of now, because the lack of light tanks, he's probably safe sitting here like this. Now, the AMX M449 gets lit, and he gets 1500 spotting damage just very, very quickly, which is awesome. Now, one thing you'll notice here is that he is in sniper view right now, and in a light tank you're not going to be doing a lot of shooting. You could be doing asking for assistance, which is fine, but generally I like to be in third person just so I can make sure that there's nothing that could potentially spot me. He gets a little bit more spotting damage here on this Tiger, which is awesome, and he nets himself 2000 spotting damage within the first minute of the game. That's a great statistic for any light tank at any tier, and he should be very happy about that. But honestly, my scout guides don't go very much more in depth than just initial spotting, and so what he does here next is going to decide whether he wins or loses this game, or how much more damage he's going to be able to farm. Looking at XVM, you'll notice that the majority of the enemy team has been lit. They have a Ferdinand and a RHM that has not been lit, but they are most likely going to be camping along the A line or possibly back in A1, A2 area. One of their Type 4s hasn't been lit, but oh, there he goes, he gets lit. So a lot of things are happening right now on this map. You'll notice that the majority of our team either stayed on the base down the 4 line trying to get shots, which is fine, and the rest of our team is in the city. We have one Scorpion G brawling it out with an STB-1 back on our base, and you'll notice the 2 Type 4s, the Patriot, the T-54, and the STB-1 are all pushing the city. We don't know where this E4 is, but there's a good chance he's sitting right here on C4, or he's going to be part of the push. These guys need to turn around and start engaging and worrying about what's going on here. But what Tankers also needs to realize is that he's not going to be able to do much here. He has the best chance of actually pushing forward to this rock here and getting shots into the city. That's going to be his best bet for farming damage. And it looks like that's exactly what he's going to do. It's a good call, Tanker's Asylum. I like what you're thinking. And because when you have XVM, you can realize that, there's really nothing left over here to actually try to shoot you. and this is a great position to get in. And when you notice that tanks are actually hugging this building right here, right in the middle, you can actually get shots up into their side. Now, one thing you'll notice here is that Tankers is aiming above the Centurion. The tank actually is visible here, and if I actually take myself out, you can probably see that the silhouette of the vehicle is right here, and he's not moving. He's giving him a free shot right in his butt, and he could probably shoot and catch him on fire or something like that, but Tankers kind of seems to be oblivious about this. And so when you're in a position where you're not sure where the enemy vehicle is, definitely move your tank around a little bit, move your reticle around, and try to get that shot, because you literally have a free shot right there. Could kill him or force him to back off, and you don't take it, and then you move forward into this E4. Now, there are multiple things you could do in this situation. One, look at XVM, realize that the E4 is an orange player and that he's not super skilled. Because of that and the fact that he doesn't have a fully traversable turret, you could actually challenge him here one-on-one in farm 2,000 damage, because realistically, the RHM and the Ferdy are going to be down the 1-2 line, and they're not going to be able to contest you. So, I mean, that would be a decision to push forward, because really the E4 is not paying any attention to you right here, and you do have that opportunity because you committed. Personally, I would have stayed back on E4 where you were previously and get shots up into that Centurion and farm them as more enemies like this M103 push forward, and or these guys fall back because of our guys that are pushing into the city. But really, something needs to happen here, because they have a lot of tanks pushing into our cap, and you know, if you're going to push forward, I would actually commit to it and actually try to take this guy out. But you auto-aim and you put a shot in, which I guess is okay, but you know, the odds of you penning him with an auto-aim, you know, realistically are quite slim. I personally would have aimed at his lower plate, but I would have just charged him and tried to kill him if that was the case, and then possibly take out Artie. Okay, so now you realize that the Centurion is, you know, available for farming. He gets killed, and now it looks like the city is lit. The RHM is lit as well, and so is the M103, and it looks like we won the city. Now, again, these are the scenarios where as a light tank you need to act. I personally would move forward and spot that E4 for our team, because they're going to be getting shot at if you're not careful. And again, it is okay to be taking these shots that you're taking here. You know, it's not super practical to be sitting here, because again, our city, our base is being captured out right now, and you're a tier 9 tank and you're quick. You really should be thinking about either going back or pushing forward, either way. But sitting still and trying to snipe with a light tank is generally not advised, especially in this situation. If there was nothing going on and it was stagnant on both sides, yeah, snipe away, but realistically, action needs to happen, and I'm glad you did decide that at this point. You know, you turned around. You know, if this IS-7 wasn't such a good player, he probably would be dead by now, as well as this E4, but we do have two of our best players in top tier vehicles, you know, trying to defend our cap, and really this is the only reason why I think we're in this position, and not completely losing. So again, looking around, you know, they still have a lot of vehicles on our cap, and if it wasn't for our guys that are brawling it out right there, you probably would have lost by now, because they would have capped out. And so this is why it's important. The second you see that huge push down the 1-2 line, you really need to decide to push forward or fall back, and that's something that I would highly recommend. Another thing is that you're driving quite into the open, and you know, these tanks, the Type 4s, they have clear shots on you, and if you turn your rear to them and they are shooting their big HE guns, then they have the opportunity to one-shot you realistically, and that's something that you probably don't want to happen. So I would have personally taken this road around here, and if you're trying to get to where your allies are, I would have pushed around the city here, or maybe even here, and get up into this position instead of risking getting shot. But you are taking some invasive maneuvers, which is nice, and you turn around and it looks like you're going to try to engage. Now, you're obviously lit when you drove across here, and it's only been about 5 seconds since you were last lit, so peeking out again, you're going to get yourself absolutely wrecked by pulling out, and this is a huge mistake. And it looks like you are trying to use your gun to shoot them. At this point, I would have also had my gold rounds loaded, because look at all those targets. They all have great armor, and you're going to have extremely hard time penetrating them, especially from a light tank. I personally, instead of pushing out into this position, would have fallen back and peeked from here, or peeked from over in this area here, so you're far enough away where you risk not getting lit. Or I would have driven up here and shot from across here, or I would have waited till I was not lit and then shoot from this area here, so at least the bush is going to protect you from getting lit. But you peek out to get some shots, and the Ferdinand hits you, and then also the Type 4 hits you, and then you lose pretty much all of your health right there. And that's, you know, in my opinion, not the best trade, because you were able to you only get one shot off, and you weren't even able to connect it. And you really just got yourself absolutely wrecked there. And so again, it's really important to realize that, you know, it takes about 10 seconds for you to get unlit from enemies, and that you want to at least wait that long before you decide to pop out into a bush right there, because you just lost most of your life. And if it was, you know, right now obviously you guys are really winning, but if this was in a situation where you only had 5 or 6 players left and they had 10, you would have, you know, just thrown the game right there by doing so. Anyway, it looks like you're trying to light the E4 here. At this point, you know, with the little HP that you have and the skill level of that E4, I would have just rushed across down to where that Carnarvon is, because the odds of you getting lit by that are so slim, and you really want to try to get that extra damage. You know, you got some good initial spotting at the beginning, which, you know, was semi-lucky, I guess, that you had allies shooting for you, that you didn't get counter-spotted by a light tank, so you were able to get that initial 2200 damage at the beginning. But right now, in terms of more spotting or more damage, you're really actually not doing much to maximize that. And you have to always be thinking, especially in a high tier light tank like this, where can I keep my gun shooting, or where can I get spots for my allies? Now realistically, they don't have any more spots that you can get, and so you have to really thinking about, you know, how much damage you can be doing, and you choose to swing really wide like this. And I really don't understand why you would swing this wide, because the E4 is hugging this cliff, he has no shots on you, and their Type 4 was down here. You need to be thinking about how fast you can get to here to try to get shots in, and also try to kill their artillery. If you had pushed from here through this area down the 4 line, or also pushed across from here, you'd probably be right around where that Carnarvon is by now, and you would have been able to either distract or track him and actually get some assist damage for tracking. But again, you swung really wide, and I personally would have just gotten in there as fast and quickly as possible. So it looks like this game is pretty much going to be wrapped up here soon. The E4 does have plenty of HP left, but with the amount of tanks closing in on it, he probably won't last much longer. And, you know, the E4 does have an extremely low rate of fire, so if you were in that position, once he fired at one of you guys once, you would have easily been able to put 2 or 3 shots into him and net you at least 1,000 damage. Looks like you're trying to get to Artie before anyone else does, which is awesome. That is the right call. Fortunately, you were able to get 1 shot in before he killed you, but I would have kind of just snuck around that corner. I personally, I don't know if you can see or not because I can't really zoom out from this position, but generally what I like to do, instead of pushing straight in like that, right in the middle of this hill right here, if you have enough speed, you can actually climb up it, right along, see where on this mini-map there's this little dent? You can actually drive straight up that cliff, and then you can get behind the Artie, because the Artie is going to assume that you're going to come from either side, and he won't be able to get a shot on you if you just hop over the middle of the ridge. And so that's something I would also recommend. But overall, you scouted very well at the beginning for your team. You were able to get that great initial spot of 2K. But the biggest thing I'm seeing here that you could improve on is actually being able to use your gun or your spotting for the rest of the game. You know, again, unfortunately, my scouting guys don't really go into talking about what you can do for post-game like this, but really, you know, sitting in the middle like that taking snapshots is something that I would not advise, especially when your 1-2 line has fallen, or, you know, there's a big opening here where you could take. And personally, if I was in your situation after that spotting, I would have been more aggressive, pushed forward, get as many shots as I could, and killed that Centurion Action X, and then push forward. When I spotted that E4, I would have taken advantage and just circled him and killed him, and then finished off Artie. And then after that point, I would have been able to go down the 1-2 line from behind and completely flank these guys. And if you played that right, you probably could have got about 4K normal damage on top of your 2K spot, and you would have netted yourself like a 6K game and a mastery badge. So, again, you know, obviously I'm not trying to be too harsh on you, but you didn't get very much damage this game except for the initial spotting. And so those are the areas that I would definitely work on. Really think about flanking, really think about, you know, isolating enemy vehicles like that E4. That's what light tanks do the best, is isolating slow tank destroyers and heavy tanks. So when you get those opportunities, even if you might have died in that situation, you were full life, he would have at least had to shoot you 2, maybe even 3 times to finish you off. And because of that, you know, your DPM would out DPM him, you would have been able to kill him most likely. And even if you weren't able to, and you only got him down to like 500 health, that would have still been another, you know, 1,500 damage instead of the 500 that you got for this replay. So again, look at those situations where you can farm damage and flank enemies, and you will see your damage output in your light tanks go up, as well as your win rate. So anyway, hopefully that was helpful. tankers, and hopefully it wasn't too critical. I know I was pretty harsh in this replay, but maybe that will help you overall become a better player. And I guess one more thing I'll add too is if you were able to take that E4 out, our guys in our city would have been able to push into their cap much quicker. And in the instance that we didn't have guys back at base defending like our IS-7 and E4, if they had pushed into the city as well, our team would have just, it would have been very hard to defend our cap from being capped out, and you taking out that E4 would have been eliminated that threat of having to push out into the open into an E4's gun, and you guys would have been able to go and cap if the teams were that kind of, if it looked like we weren't going to win. So again, anyway, hopefully you guys like this review. If you did, I'd really appreciate it if you give it a like down below, and if you haven't already, subscribe to my channel for more content like this in the future. As always, guys, thanks for watching, and I'll catch you guys later.